In this video, I'll guide you step by step through the call for proposal page on the Funding and Tenders portal, so you can combine this knowledge with information from my previous video and identify a suitable call for you and your project. When you open the call that you're interested in at the Funding and Tenders Opportunities Portal, first thing that you're going to see is the general information about the call. Here you see the most important part, which is the deadline. Make sure that the deadline is far away enough for you to prepare the application to the best of your abilities. Now, the second most important thing here is the deadline model. In most cases, this is a single stage deadline, meaning that there's just one deadline. You submit the application as a whole, and then you wait for the assessment and to get to know whether you got the funding or not. In some cases, there is a two-stage or even multiple-stage deadline model. Then you're going to find an additional section that explains what documentation you have to prepare for each of the stages, and only if you pass the first stage, you're going to be invited to the second or even third one. It is easiest to look for single stage calls if you're able to choose between the two of them, especially if it is your first time applying for EU funding, as it is simply the easiest process. Now you're going to scroll below to the topic description. Make sure to read the entire topic description, and here ensure that the scope of the call fits into the objectives of your proposal. Here, I really strongly suggest that you go to my website that I'll link down in the description box, and make sure that you use my comparison scheme to check whether your project is fully fit into the objectives and scope of this call, as you might simply not want to lose time to prepare a call that you're not suited for. In this section, you can also find the proposed activities bullet points. Here you see examples, in this case, analyzing vulnerabilities or mapping and prioritizing the risk that the different drivers of change pose to the food systems. Make sure to check whether your project could fit under one of those bullet points, because later in your application, you could mention that, hey, my project actually is one of the proposed activities that you mentioned in the call itself. Now, the next section that you're going to come across below the general information and the topic description is the destination. The destination is a section in which the Commission describes the legal regulation behind the program that offers this call for funding, but also the objectives which are behind the program, meaning why does the institution give money for this specific cause? What do they want to achieve? What do they want your business to do? Now, this part is usually very long, and you should give it a brief read in the beginning. Don't get into the nitty-gritty details, as there's simply no need for that. However, this section is very important when working on the actual application, because again, the more connections you make in your application text in between your project and those objectives and the legal foundation that they are describing, the higher the chances of your project and your application actually being successful. Now we are headed to the general conditions. And this is the second most important section after the general topic description that you first saw on the top of the page. Here in the list, you can find the requirements that you have to fulfill to even be able to apply for that call. Here you see the admissibility conditions, the eligible countries. If you're not an EU-based business, this section is going to be quite important for you to check whether you can apply by yourself, what type of activities you have to be involved in and able to apply, or whether you have to find and partner up with another company and build a consortium for the purpose of applying for that specific call. Below, you also find the financial and operational capacity and exclusions. This part is especially important for subsidies where you have to provide your financial input on top of the money that you will get from the European Union. For small businesses, another very important point here, if you do not fulfill the financial and operational capacity requirements, you can partner up with a company that does, and you can apply for this call as partners. Then you have two other last points, and that is evaluation and award. So what happens once you submit the application, what the process looks like, and legal and financial setup of the grants. So what happens, what you have to obey by, and you get the grant. There are specific frameworks that you have to stick to declare your expenses and get the full grant that you have been granted. Now, at the very bottom, you have the document section. And I cannot stress that enough. This is the most important part. Make sure to download the standard application form and the evaluation form, not to fill them out at the first point, but to look into the sections that are there and the required documents that you have to prepare to get started with your application. And then the additional documents. This is usually the working program or the work program of the whole scheme under which this call is offered. Look briefly over the whole program, in this case, the Horizon Europe program, which is currently the largest funding program of the European Union, and check whether your activities and the objectives of your project fit into the goals that the Union has set out under this working program. And then the last thing that you can see right here are some financial regulation and annexes. The annexes are really the outline of all the requirements, the nitty-gritty application points that you have to consider when preparing your application. So in conclusion, when you look at the call page on the Funding and Tender Opportunities Portal, make sure to first look at the general information and the topic description. Then your attention should be attracted by the conditions and documents section. And lastly, you should download the attached documents and give them a good read to make sure that the call is suited for you, but also that you know how to prepare yourself for the application process. Well, if you found this video useful, please don't forget to follow my channel, visit my website, and follow my other social media, as I am now publishing an entire series of getting EU funding for your business.